For the next segment, we're going to switch it up a little bit and talk about some football. The show, after all, is entitled Sideline to Sideline, not Coast to Coast. So, I'm going to give you guys my mock draft of the upcoming NFL draft that's actually happening later this month, April 27th. Give you my top 10 picks. About a week before the draft starts, I'll probably drop a full first-round mock draft for you guys on an episode. But for right now, I'll just give you a top 10. With the first pick in the draft, we get the Cleveland Browns, otherwise known as a factory of sadness. So the Browns with the first pick, honestly, I feel like they have a very easy choice, a pretty no-brainer pick. Myles Garrett, 6'4", 270-pound defensive end out of Texas A&M, is an absolute monster, freak of nature, a game changer. The Cleveland Browns may not have their quarterback situation figured out, but Garrett is a once-in-a-generation talent. Garrett's a guy that's drawn comparisons to players like Julius Peppers, and if a guy plays like Julius Peppers, a Hall of Famer, he's someone that you got to take no matter who else is on the board. He's the best available talent. The Browns spent some money on their offensive line this offseason, spent a little bit of money on the offensive side of the ball. I think that Garrett can really anchor down that defense and be the best player on that team in a few years' time. With the second pick in the draft, the San Francisco 49ers will be on the clock. New regime there. John Lynch took over as first-time GM. No previous experience. Was a great safety in the NFL, but we'll see how his GM experience goes. Lynch is coming into a position with a team that really is in kind of shambles from last year. The whole Colin Kaepernick situation, Chip Kelly, the team didn't perform very well. They really haven't in the last few years since Patrick Willis and Justin Smith retired and the firing of Harbaugh. Trent Baalke is the GM. Being ousted finally may help the team. But Lynch will have a tough pick on his hands. I think he goes with best player available route. Even though quarterback is a situation they need to solve, I feel like there really isn't a guy in this draft that you can justify taking with the second pick when you have a talent like Solomon Thomas on the board, the defensive end from Stanford. Another 6'3", 270-pound freak. In any other draft, he'd be in consideration for the number one pick. But since Myles Garrett is in this, he'll have to settle for the second pick. It's a guy that runs a 4'7" at that size, 270 pounds, like I said. He can play anywhere on the defensive line. You can play him at defensive tackle in a 3-4 or 4-3, and he can also play defensive end for you in a 3-4 or 4-3 as well. Extremely versatile player. I think he'd be a great building block for that defense to add with Arik Armstead, who they picked a couple years ago, and then Buckner, who they picked in last year's draft. Another possibility I could see for the Niners, though, with this pick is making a trade here. I could see them accumulating some picks, maybe moving down for a quarterback that they really like. John Lynch said at the Combine that Deshaun Kaiser, the quarterback from Notre Dame, had an amazing interview. He could be falling in love with him, really want him on the team, pick up a couple mid or late first-round picks to trade down from that number 2 spot. I don't know who necessarily would trade up. Maybe the Jets at 6 would take their shot there if they really want their guy and don't want anyone to move up past him. But for now, I'll have them taking Solomon Thomas. With the third overall pick, we got the Chicago Bears. Another team that offensively is pretty capable, but their defense is pretty lackluster. Brought Mike Glennon in to be their quarterback this offseason, the backup from the Bucs. We'll see what he can do. Big guy, 6'6", about 240 pounds with a live arm. So since they invested in him, I'm not so sure that they'll take a quarterback, which is something that they could look at that pick or early in the second round with their next pick. For now, I'll have them taking Jamal Adams, a safety from LSU. Kind of the complete package. He's not necessarily a ball hawk that's going to get you 7 interceptions a year, but does a terrific job playing the back end of the defense, can step into the box. A player that's drawn comparisons to Eric Berry, the safety from the Chiefs. Eric Berry, an all-pro, perennial Pro Bowl safety. It's a pretty good comparison in terms of what I've seen on tape watching Adams. A guy that ran a 4.5 flat at the Combine, but improved that time to a mid 4.3 at his pro day. If he just runs anywhere in that range, that's great for him. A lot better than, obviously, if he would have run a 4.6, that would have hurt his stock a bit, but kind of solidified where he'd be picked, and I don't think that 3 is overreaching for an elite safety in this day and age where the NFL is moving way more to a passing league. I think you really need a back-end safety that can lead your defense, and he can be the next great safety in a line with Earl Thomas and guys like that and guys of that mold and Eric Berry, like I mentioned. With the fourth pick, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, their team, pretty offensively loaded. Blake Bortles is kind of a question mark at quarterback. We'll see what happens this year. But Allen Robinson at wide receiver and Allen Hurns at wide receiver are great weapons for him to throw to. They've been investing a lot of money in the defensive side of the ball this free agency and last free agency. In last year's first 2 picks, they picked Jalen Ramsey, the cornerback out of Florida State, had a great rookie season. He'll be their number 1 corner for years to come. And Miles Jack, the athletic outside linebacker from UCLA, with their 2nd pick. I think this time around, they got to find that bell cow running back. Their backs last year combined for 3.7 yards a carry between Chris Ivory and TJ Yeldon, and that just won't get the job done. I think if they have a guy that they can protect Blake Bortles with that can carry the rock about 20 times a game, they'd be set. So with that being said, I think they take Leonard Fournette, the running back from LSU. Big back, 6 foot, weighed in at 240 pounds at the combine, but still ran a 4.5 140. It's absolutely insane at that size, how fluid he is in his movement. He dropped 12 pounds going into his pro day, came in at 228, just to show that he could lose the weight if NFL teams wanted him to. So he could play anywhere in that range, really can be your bell cow back. A guy that's drawn comparisons to Adrian Peterson, and Todd Gurley is a prospect coming out. With what the Cowboys did last year, drafting Zeke in the top 5, I think that running back is back in play for NFL teams, and they don't feel like they're overreaching with taking one in the top 5. I think that adding Fournette to that Jags offense could make him really potent and could really help them compete in that division within the next couple years. There's not a team that's far and away better than the others when you have the Titans, Colts, and the Texans. They're kind of all jockeying for position in that division. I think Fournette could go a long way to helping them get to the top. For the 5th pick, the Tennessee Titans will be picking. Now, they got a great young team, like what they did last year. Solid power running game with DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry. Great young quarterback with Marcus Mariota. Now what I think they need to do is get Mariota a legitimate number 1 weapon. And how you do that is you draft Mike Williams, the receiver from Clemson. Had an absolute animal season, coming off a broken neck actually. Still had over 90 catches and 1,300 yards coming back. Torched Alabama in the national championship game. A guy that's about 6'3", 215, 220 pounds at his playing weight. A guy that reminds me a lot of Alshon Jeffrey, the receiver for the Bears and now the Eagles. I think that he's just that jump ball receiver. You go get it. Clemson's coach Dabo Swinney said that they had the Mike Williams rule. If there was 1 guy on him, he's open. If there's 2, he's open. So, I mean, that shows a lot coming from a national championship coach to have that kind of confidence in a guy. I think he's your prototypical number 1 wide receiver. Don't think he's a burner that'll take the top off of your defense, but a great possession guy for Mariota to trust and grow with for the next 10 years. I think that Mike Williams would be a great complement to guys they already have on the roster, like Rashard Matthews and Tajay Sharp that they brought in last year as a 5th-round pick. Young receiving course, but I really think that Williams could help put that offense over the top and make it something really exciting to watch this year. At pick number 6, the New York Jets have a big decision to make. Their offense is pretty abysmal. Defense is aging. They're really in rebuilding mode right now. I think that what they need to do is address the quarterback position. Like I mentioned earlier, the quarterback class isn't that great this year, not that deep. Been hearing from a lot of scouts and GMs and stuff I've been reading and watching that there's just not one clear-cut guy that seems to be NFL ready. One guy that could possibly do the job for him, though, would be Mitch Trubisky, quarterback from North Carolina. He's only a 1-year starter. That's where the concern comes in. In terms of pro player comparisons, though, Trubisky matches up pretty well with Derek Carr when he was coming out of Fresno State, which isn't a bad comparison. He's had a great early run in the NFL until breaking his leg last year. If that didn't happen, the Raiders are probably in Super Bowl contention. Trubisky with the 6th pick wouldn't be anything I'd be against with the Jets doing. They have right now Christian Hackenberg, who they took in the 2nd round last year from Penn State. He hasn't developed much, hasn't had many snaps. Don't know if he'll really be the answer. Was more of a developmental guy. Geno Smith left the team finally, their former 2nd round pick. They spent enough time with him. They got Bryce Petty, 4th rounder a couple years ago. He hasn't shown that he can really be that guy in the NFL. I think they need to start over, and Trubisky seems to be the consensus top quarterback in this class, and I think that the Jets need to pull the trigger at 6. For the 7th pick in the draft, it will be the now Los Angeles Chargers taking their selection. The Chargers have quite a bit to build off on the defensive side of the ball. They could be looking for help for Phillip Rivers on offense. I wouldn't be opposed to them taking someone like Mike Williams if he falls to that position. Since he's gone to number 5 at Tennessee, I think that they need to take care of the back end of the defense in the secondary. A guy like Malik Hooker, the safety from Ohio State, if he's there, would be perfect. Since losing Eric Weddle last year, they've had some drop-off in the safety play. Their corners are pretty good with bookends. Casey Hayward, who led the NFL in picks last year, and Jason Verrett, if he can stay healthy, obviously. But Malik Hooker's an absolute ball hawk. Only 1 year as a starter at Ohio State, but his ball skills are just absolutely unmatched. A lot of scouts are saying that he's the best safety that they've scouted coming into the NFL. He's drawing Ed Reed comparisons. Ed Reed, arguably the greatest free safety in NFL history. Hooker isn't a guy that'll come up in the box and hit you like Cam Chancellor will, but to have that guy patrolling your backfield, like I said, with the NFL moving to such a passing league these days, I think that Hooker would be a really solid pick at 7 to help advance that young defense that they have going there in Los Angeles now. With the 8th pick, we have the Carolina Panthers, and how the mighty have fallen since their Super Bowl matchup against the Broncos. Last season did not go as planned. I think that they could look to get Cam some help on the offensive side of the ball with the offensive linemen. With the 8th pick, though, it seems like a bit of a stretch. This offensive line class isn't exactly deep, and there's not one clear-cut guy that should be a top 10 pick this year. I think that they could trade back if they wanted to, but I think that they might stay put as well. That defense last year got torched in the secondary after they lost Josh Norman to the Redskins. I think they really need to replace what Norman brought to that team as a number 1 corner and go get him with that 8th pick, and I think that guy is Marshawn Lattimore, cornerback from Ohio State, going right after his Ohio State buddy Hooker. He's a 6-foot corner with all the athleticism in the world, extremely fluid, has some hamstring injury issues in the past, but in terms of pure cornerbacks, he could be an elite number 1 in this league for years to come. Has all the traits, can come up and tackle, unmatched in man coverage. I think Lattimore in a deep group of cornerbacks this year, there are a lot of different guys who teams have number 1 on their board. In my opinion, I think Lattimore is the best pure corner in this class, and the Panthers go take him with the 8th pick. At pick 9, the Cincinnati Bengals have a lot of interesting options that they can address. Unfortunately for them in free agency this year, they lost their starting left tackle, Andrew Whitworth, who went and signed a big contract with the Rams. And they also lost their guard, Kevin Zeitler, to the Browns on another big contract. They have Jake Fisher and Cedric Ogbuehi, who they're hoping to come in and fill those positions this year that they drafted in the first round the last couple years. But if they haven't seen the production from them in practice and the potential, they could decide to go the offensive line route. Once again, like I just mentioned with the previous pick, there isn't a guy, though, that you could really justify taking that high in this class. With that being said, I think they really need to address the defense and specifically the middle linebacker position. And a guy right there it's the clear-cut middle linebacker in this class is Reuben Foster from the University of Alabama. Absolute animal, was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. Has just been a man among boys ever since he stepped foot on Alabama's campus. Extremely fluid. He'll come up and stuff the run, and he'll also drop back in coverage with no issues. I think that he could be a great defensive leader for that team. Issues with Foster, however, lie in the fact that he was sent away from the Combine after having a dispute with one of the Combine personnel men. He wasn't able to perform in any interviews or on-field work. That off-field character questions, teams will have their private meetings with him and talk to him about that, figure it out. It's nothing like a domestic abuse charge, though, or possession of drugs. I think that Foster is a top 10 talent, and the Bengals have taken on players with off-field issues before and helped them turn their careers around. I think that Foster's too talented for them to pass up with the 9th pick. And with the 10th pick to wrap up this mock draft is the Buffalo Bills. The Bills bring in a new coach in Doug McDermott. He was the defensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers, so you could look for them to address the defensive side of the ball and for him to build that defense how he'd like it. They lost their number 1 cornerback, Stephon Gilmore, to the New England Patriots this offseason, and that really hurts them. So they could look to replace there. But like I mentioned, the cornerback class this year is really deep, and with having another pick at the top end of the 2nd round, I think they could find a cornerback there that would typically be a first-round pick in any other draft. So I don't think they need to justify reaching for one with the 10th pick here. I think instead they need to get Tyrod Taylor and LaShawn McCoy some other offensive firepower on that side of the ball. Sammy Watkins, if he can stay healthy, has proven that he can be a number 1 wide receiver in this league. But Robert Woods, their second receiver, just left this offseason for the Rams on a big contract. They need to replace that production. And frankly, Woods wasn't necessarily a number 2 receiver in this league anyway. I think he's better suited as a 3 or 4. I think Corey Davis, the wide receiver from Western Michigan, could really come in and step into that number 2 role for the Buffalo Bills, if not be the number 1 receiver if Sammy Watkins continues to be injury prone. Corey Davis is probably the best route runner in this class, broken numerous NCAA records in terms of catches in a single season in a career, yards in a career in a single season. He had over 1,500 this last year. He's about 6'3". I've seen comparisons actually to Terrell Owens. Other guys are a little bit concerned with his long speed in terms of his like 40-yard dash time and whatnot. He unfortunately wasn't able to perform at the combine due to a foot injury, and probably isn't going to be able to work out for teams before the draft either. So they're just going to have to go based on tape. But sometimes that's not necessarily such a bad thing with the player. Numbers can skew, and sometimes you'll reach for a guy just because his combine numbers are better than others, instead of letting the tape speak for a guy. With Corey Davis, I think the tape speaks for itself, but I really think that Corey Davis is a 4-4 type receiver, a 6'3". I think that his cuts and his route running have a place in the NFL, definitely as a number 2 receiver with potential to be a number 1. I would be ecstatic if I was a Bills fan if they took him at the 10th pick. And with that pick, that wraps up our mock draft for now. That's the top 10, how I see it falling. Things could change in the next month, obviously, and there could be some trades in the draft. I'm going to keep doing some research, watching some more film, see if I think there's going to be any more changes coming. And like I said earlier, I'll bring you guys a full first-round mock draft in an episode about a week before the Combine, about April 20th. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys' time. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe. Trying to get this ball rolling. If you guys like what I'm about, help me out here. There should be a subscribe button, link right about here. Maybe this direction or up there. Not sure. Thank you guys once again. This has been Sideline to Sideline with your boy Tyson Ross. Stay beautiful, you filthy animals.